Believe it or not, we have 3 stories coming out of Warner Brothers, none of which are particularly good, but there's one that's particularly bad, and I think we need to cover all of them, so stick around because I'm not liking what I'm seeing and doesn't bode well for Warner Brothers DC Future. I think it's going to be bad. Here we go. Now, before we get started, just a real quick reminder, double check you're still subscribed to the channel, and if you're not, turn that little red button to gray. Also, turn on the notification bell, turn all the notifications on so you don't miss anything. I do dozens and dozens of stories each and every week in the form of videos and live streams, and you don't want to miss any of that. You want to be informed, educated, and entertained, and that's kind of my job here. So, with that, let's jump in. Now again, there are 3 stories here. We're starting off with That Park Place from Marvin Montanaro, and Warner Brothers has moved up the Superman digital release to August 15th, despite strong theatrical holds that they seem to be abandoning. Doesn't make a lot of sense if you're trying to make the most amount of money to recover your budget and marketing, and they are not really there yet. This is a strange maneuver, I would say, for those folks in charge of Warner Brothers. And as noted here, Warner Brothers Discovery has unexpectedly moved up the digital release of James Gunn's Superman reboot. August 15th is when we'll see it, 35 days after its July 11, 2025 theatrical debut. Now, if you've been paying attention to some of the folks that are in this sphere, they already told you this date, even though the dates that had been publicized were the 25th, 10 days later. And yet, here we are, back on the 15th, as well, people like me have been telling you. Again, originally planned for the 26th, technically the 25th, this accelerated timeline has ignited controversy with industry experts and exhibitors criticizing the decision as detrimental to the film's strong theatrical momentum and relationships with the theater chains. Believe me, the theaters want this thing to stay there, and if you are looking for money, so do you. The film, directed and written by James Gunn, Superman kicks off the new DC universe under Gunn and Peter Safran's stewardship at DC Studios. David Corenswet, of course, is Clark/Superman, with Rachel Brosnahan as a pretty well-cast Lois Lane. Nicholas Hoult rounds out the trio and was a really great Lex Luthor, no matter what anybody tells you. And you had a lot of other people join an ensemble cast that I actually decried at the beginning for going to, well, take away substantially from the screen time from the primary characters, which to some extent it did, but it didn't really displace the Superman story that was going on. It just created opportunities for other people to be there for, well, their future true film roles. Strangely, the box office performance wasn't bad. It was much better than previous Marvel releases and, well, the most recent one as well, because Fantastic Four doesn't seem to measure up, kind of like a lot of people in this sphere said it wasn't going to. As of August 13th, Superman has amassed 581.1 million worldwide on its way to 600. Good way to get there would be let it finish up this weekend at least, with 332.4 million domestically, 248.7 internationally, and that gives you your total. But it also gives you some relevant information as far as how films are performing internationally as a whole, especially recently. As the global economy has kind of gone into neutral, not a lot of people are going to do things. And as the globalists have now affected the employment and other things of people that are native in individual countries, and giving preferential treatment, of course, to those who have come over there not legally or with good intention, you're starting to see the effects of that in the marketplace, most particularly in the entertainment marketplace, because people just don't have the money for it. So this actually positions this film as the highest grossing superhero film of 2025, outpacing Marvel's Captain America, Brave New World, Thunderbolts, and notably the Fantastic Four, First Steps, which released later and probably more detrimentally than they realized. It's also become the top-earning domestic solo Superman film in U.S. history, which says something, but not as much as it would have years ago when we didn't have such a difference or differential in inflation, as Marvin notes, it's still trailing behind Man of Steel globally at $668 million, where it did really, really well. The film debuted strongly at $125 million domestically, beating out Marvel's only film that even bothered to challenge it, and claimed the third largest opening of 2025. It had exceptional legs, as Marvin notes. It only dropped 54% in the second weekend, and it outperformed typical superhero declines like the Thunderbolts at 56%, Captain Anti-America at 68%, and obviously the second, third, fourth, and probably every other weekend that Marvel will be in there with Fantastic Four. The solid hold is probably attributable to great word of mouth and a cinema score at A- with an 82% Rotten Tomatoes. The younger demographics had this film cleaning up, and it competed pretty well with competitors in the live action and the animated genres. And again, just to rub salt into the wound, Fantastic Four opened at $117.6 million, well below they actually advertised, plummeted 66% to $40 million in its second weekend, and then crashed out on its third weekend in an embarrassing way. So why do you think they're jumping the digital release? Why is this releasing so quickly? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but it looks like Cosmic Book News may have some. Why releasing Superman early on digital could be the right call. I can't imagine that would be true. And while some fans voice frustration over Superman hitting digital just 35 days after release, there's a case to be made that Warner Brothers is making the right move. I don't agree. A lot of fans are going ballistic about the early release. You have the Snyder cultists celebrating, of course. And then there are those fans worried about the early release signaling that the newly launched DCU is already in trouble. And you know what? I fall in that camp. How about you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. However, let's take a more optimistic approach, says Matt, which actually, this might be the right call. Domestic gains at this stage are minimal, and that's true. If we compare Superman's current run to the Batman, the numbers tell the story. It's started to fade, or it already started to fade, and now it's tailing badly. But after a similar point in the release window, the Batman only managed to pull in another $20 million domestically before leaving theaters. And the question is that really harmful? I can't imagine anybody complaining, oh no, don't give me $20 more million. But maybe. The Superman now past its peak earning weeks, the likelihood of significant domestic gains are slim. Maybe. We can also add that Superman dominated the domestic box office this summer, even outperforming Jurassic World Rebirth. Now that's in domestic earnings only, and that's absolutely true, but the Dinos played better internationally, and it's one of the few films that did, so let's give it credit where credit's due. It just didn't appeal as much to Americans, likely because it was too formulaic, and it was a dinosaur movie without a lot of dinosaurs. And if Matt's got a point, it's this one. International box office is stalled. Yeah, most of the movies this year stalled out, at least the American ones. That said, the overseas markets have dried up for Gunn's Superman. The film's international total is far below Batman's 400+ million haul, and it isn't showing signs of rebound, nor will it. I think I've explained why we might be having a little bit of an issue with international numbers, and they may actually be trying to get ahead of the competition. You see, we can also argue that releasing early gives Superman a head start before a crowded release slate hits, because it's going to be crowded. There are a lot of films released on top of each other, like Paramount's Mission Impossible and Apple's F1 movie. They're set to hit digital in the coming weeks. So by dropping Superman on digital now, ensures it's maximizing its home market sales and rentals before those heavy hitters arrive, or competitors anyway. And perhaps this is one of those moments where you get it while it's hot. With diminishing box office returns, stalled international numbers, and a major competition on the horizon, or 2 or 3, moving Superman to digital now could capture demand while it's still hot without sacrificing what's left on the theatrical run. But we're not done, because the juiciest of all possibilities is still one step beyond the horizon. and a story that surprised me down to my shoes, and once again dropped by our friends at Cosmic Book News. James Gunn backlash, Warner Brothers finds his antics annoying. Holy cow. That's not what you want to hear when you just basically restarted a studio and you drop your first project. Is he doing something else that we're not aware of that is just blowing up his reputation? Or is it just because he tends to play fast and loose with the truth, especially with the fans? It's claimed that Warner Brothers is finding James Gunn's online behavior more and more annoying and that it's hurting things more than helping things. And I would argue that might be true, especially when he's debating the budget with people who actually know better. And with him claiming to call them kind of stupid, that's not helping. The claim follows Gunn recently shooting down a rumor that Robin is in Matt Reeves' The Batman Part 2 script. I don't know why he even bothered to comment, to be fair. And for those of you who didn't know what James Gunn said, Gunn replied to the rumor. Guys, please stop believing this nonsense. I think 6 of us have read the script. No one knows anything about the Batman 2. Well, I would say that the writer does. I mean, maybe there are a few other insiders that have been let in the door. It wouldn't be hard for me to believe that some people were a little chatty. Jeff Snyder blasts James Gunn because of all of this. The rumor came via Jeff Snyder, who isn't too happy with Gunn's approach. Speaking on the hot mic on YouTube, Snyder blasted the DC's boss, says, "I know who my source is. I know my source has been right about a whole bunch of stories that have been confirmed this week. Unfortunately, James Gunn has proven himself to be as trustworthy as Lance Armstrong in my book." Wow, that's a shot. I don't believe a word out of his mouth. Once the things I was told unequivocally, Robin is in the script. And it's possible. We just don't know which Robin it is. Is it Dick Grayson? Probably not. But there's a cascading scale of failure that they could pick from. I'm not going to get into it. I don't give an F what James Gunn says anymore. This guy is the most annoying studio head I've ever heard of or met or seen or anything. I don't think it's winning him any fans. I don't think it's winning him fans on the Warner Brothers lot, where I know people find him and his antics to be annoying. Yikes. The question is, do his bosses feel the same way? Snyder also jabbed Gunn over Superman's box office because, well, it wasn't gangbusters. Bro, your movie is probably going to get to 600 million, a number that I would say is probably closer to spot on than I would like. Take that W, if you want to call it that, and shut up. Ooh, that wasn't nice. Go focus on reading scripts and making movies and TV shows because it seems you get paid a lot of money to spend a lot of time on Blue Sky and Threads, which is also telling. It tells you a lot about Gunn's politics and his leanings because he's looking for adulation from a crowd that has a very myopic view of everything. Of course, tying it into the last story we covered, early digital release adds fuel to the fire. Snyder's $600 million prediction might not be as far off. Mine was $630 before digital release. Warner Brothers just announced Superman released digitally Friday after 35 days in theaters, which seems to be about, well, the norm if you are not making money and you're not having good holds. But that's not true of either of these things, except it does seem to be fading a bit. Mentioned before, fans have been very upset about the early drop, calling it too soon and saying it kills the theatrical run, which it does. And others see it as a bad sign for the newly relaunched DCU. In my opinion, I think that all of this negative news isn't going to help James Gunn's future for the DC studio. I think that keeping his mouth closed might be the better or best cause of action that he could take from all of this unsolicited and unkind feedback. I think he needs to try to make his films to last months on end in the theaters so the studio can reach a huge revenue potential, and perhaps he should stick to things that the fans like and the fans have suggested, because that always seems to be a positive result. I know that studio heads and creators these days try to avoid the origin story that seems to have been so played out, but starting where and how he did with this Superman seemed to push fans onto one side or the other. And the question will be where he starts with other important characters in this universe that he's building, and if he is going to stay staunch in the world he's presenting. Because if he does that, it's a big win. If he alternates presentation styles, however, it may throw more things askew than draw things together. And at this point, the DC universe needs to be unified. So hopefully we get more unity. Did you appreciate this Superman movie? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. Well, I thought it wasn't half bad, but I didn't exactly give it stellar grades. This was a 7, 6.5, 7 out of my scale in 10 points, but it certainly beat the pants off of anything Marvel has presented in a long, long time. Are you looking forward to the new DC universe? And, of course, the drunken Supergirl that we were presented with at the end of the last movie. Do you think that's the next best place to start? Or do you think there have to be other characters out there that could have made this new introduction much more compelling? Let me know what you thought down in the comments section below, as I mentioned before. And if you have anything else to say about Superman, Warner Brothers, or James Gunn himself, let me know those in the comments section below. As always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya! Hopefully, at a good James Gunn movie.